So it's good to see people joining us for our annual meeting. We're just going to wait a few more minutes for more people to join, and then we'll start the meeting.
Oh, so good afternoon. Sorry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Sorry, oh dear.
Don't worry. We're actually recording now, Olasina. So if you don't mind putting yourself on mute just while we're letting people in and getting going. Hi, Paul. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes. I can see there are more attendees joining, so we'll just give it a couple more minutes and then we'll make a start.
Are you keeping well?
So I think one more minute and then we'll start. I think the number of attendees joining is slowing down a bit. Okay, well, we'll make a start, and hopefully if anybody joins after this, they can catch up. Welcome to everybody to the annual meeting of Healthwatch Croydon. During this meeting, we're going to be talking about what we did during 2020-21. Sorry about that. We are recording this, and it is being shown live on YouTube. However, you, as attendees, you won't be shown on the video, and all of the panelists have given their permission to be recorded, so I hope that's not a problem for anybody. We're really pleased to be able to welcome you to this meeting, and we're also going to be welcoming the Deputy Mayor Councillor Felicity Flynn, who will be joining us shortly, and she'll be speaking to us later. And welcome to all of you too. So I'll be introducing people to you before they speak, or they'll be introducing each other so that you'll know who everybody is when they're talking to you. And I'd just like to thank you all for giving up your time to come to this meeting today. We've got a really full agenda today, which reflects how busy we've been. 2020 feels like a long time ago now, but what we're going to do is start with a review of what we did during that year, hear from our staff, some of our volunteers, some of our local leadership board members, and from the Deputy Mayor. And then we're going to have a change of pace with a short mindfulness session run by Martin Fairs, our Deputy Chair, and then move on into the second half, where we'll be hearing about some of the work done by Health, Social Care and Community Services in Croydon, followed by a question and answer session with our panel of local senior leaders. Since this is a Zoom meeting, it's not quite as friendly and informal as we would like to have with face-to-face meetings. But if you want to ask a question, we're having two panels today, a panel of local leadership board members at the end of the first half, and then a panel of health and care leaders in the second half. So if you want to ask a question of either of our panels, please can you put your question into the Q&A function that you'll find within your Zoom link, and we'll deal with as many of these as we can during the session. If your question is not addressed, if we can, we'll respond to it afterwards and put something on our website or on social media to address the issue. So before we go any further, what I'd like to do is to ask if we could practice using the poll function, because we're going to be using it again later on in the meeting. So Jeet, if you could put the poll questions up on the screen, and we'll ask people if they could just have a go at using the poll. Who's going to put the poll questions up? Jeet's saying that she can't do. Oh, here it is. Okay, so if people don't mind, just click onto one of those options. So how are you feeling today, right now? Give us a rating, 1 being low, 10 being amazing. If you can choose an option, and we'll see how we get on with people's reactions.
Edwina, I'm not seeing it.
Okay, so some people can't see the poll on their screen. I don't know why.
The host and the panelists cannot vote, I'm afraid.
Okay, so the host and the panelists can't vote, but the attendees should be seeing it and should be able to vote.
Yes.
Right, okay, that's lovely. So I can see that some people have participated, but there are quite a lot that haven't. If people want to participate, if they could have a go. You might have to scroll up and down a bit to be able to get the number that you want to. Any more people wanting to participate? We're going to close it shortly. Okay. I think we'll close it now. We've only had a few people participate. Some people are having difficulties seeing the poll, I think.
I think quite a few are having problems in seeing it.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is just a practice one, as I said earlier, which is helpful to know that people are having trouble with it, because it gives us an opportunity to work on it before we do this for real later on. So if we end the poll now and show people the results that we have got, and then we'll move on. So the poll's ended, and where are we? So the majority, four of our participants, 4 out of 11 that participated, gave us a 7. 2 gave us 10, which is brilliant. So 2 people are feeling amazing. Nobody less than 5, which is really good for a Tuesday lunchtime. Okay, so we'll finish that now, and we'll look at what was causing the difficulties for people joining the poll, and try and put that right before we use it again later on in the meeting. Okay, so if somebody could take it down off the screen, please, that would be really, really helpful. Okay. Is somebody going to take it down? Right, okay. So hopefully that's gone. If it hasn't, if you click on the red button for your own poll, and that made it disappear for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to talk a bit about what happened during the year 2020-2021. This is really just a bit of an extended version of information that's already in the annual report. So if you've seen the annual report, then hopefully this will not be new news to you. If you haven't, then I do urge you to have a look after this this meeting finishes, and you can find it on our website. So during this section, I'll be focusing mainly on the financial year April 2020 to March 2021, which is also the time frame that's mainly covered by our annual report. Now, people might remember March 2020 as being the month that COVID-19 really hit home to people, and when the first lockdown started. I remember it feeling really sudden and dramatic, and feeling quite confused initially about what that actually meant and what we were meant to be doing. I mean, there was lots of information coming out for us, telling us, sorry, I was just looking at a message on WhatsApp. So there was lots of information coming out telling us about what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. A lot of people were urged to work from home, or they were put on furlough by their employers. Essential staff, of course, we know, were still having to go into work and worry about the implications of that for getting infected and so on. We all became acquainted with face masks or face coverings, although there was a bit of confusion about who should wear them and why and when and so on initially. I think a lot of us, particularly those who've been around children, will remember the sort of happy birthday hand washing routine that people got into in the early days, and hopefully a lot of people still follow. Social distancing became a thing. Social restrictions as well about, you know, who you could mix with, who you couldn't, whether not being able to stay overnight with anybody else. Shortages of PPE made national news, didn't they? And concerns about people living in care homes and the difficulties that they were having with catching COVID from people being discharged from hospital and so on. Shortages of a number of things, shortages not just of PPE, but of essential food items. And for some bizarre reason, panic buying of toilet rolls. I never did quite get to the bottom of, but most people seem to join in with. But individual people had very different lockdown experiences, didn't they, depending on their circumstances. And for many people, it was a time of homeschooling or financial insecurity, social isolation, fear, illness, or even bereavement. And an awful lot of people suffered bereavement during the early days, and it was a really difficult time for many people. But there was also an incredible response from many people volunteering in different community and voluntary sector organisations, for example, helping at food banks, mutual aid groups, and so on. For Healthwatch Croydon, there was an immediate impact in that our office closed virtually immediately. Our staff began working from home, and they're still mainly working from home even now. And we had no face-to-face contact with residents, which initially made it more difficult to involve our volunteers in our work. And we had to think really hard about how we could continue to engage and involve our volunteers in what we were doing. Like many organisations, we quickly switched to online working via online surveys, using Zoom, team meetings and so on. We're still learning, very much as you'll work out today, how to do that, but I think we've got a little bit better than at the beginning. Our information and advice phone line, the Healthwatch Hub, continued to operate during this difficult time, providing support, advice and signposting to Croydon residents. And I think that was quite a boon to a number of people. And we did increase the frequency of our newsletter, online newsletter, so that we could share information with people in a timely fashion. We were also aware, and we still are, that some people either are not able to afford or are not able to, or not comfortable with communicating via electronic systems. And so we've found other ways to reach out to people, such as using paper surveys with a free post option so that they can send the information back to us and we can then put it onto our system. Or booked phone calls so that somebody, a trained person, can ring them and talk through the survey questions and record their responses. However, we're really looking forward to resuming face-to-face discussions with people, and our team are beginning to come back to Croydon and to re-meet with people and to rekindle relationships that have had to be mainly through online meetings and phone calls in the last couple of years. Our first COVID survey went live in early April, and we were able to give reports to local health and council leaders and senior managers in April and in May. And you're going to hear more about this later from Yinka. We reached out to local leaders to find out what we could do to help. And from that, we worked with the council to find out about the experience of people who were clinically extremely vulnerable and advised to shield. I don't know if people can remember shielding, but for some people it was a real struggle during that first and second lockdown. our findings of how the experience was for them and how they experienced the support that the council had organised and that was provided by a mixture of council and voluntary sector staff and volunteers. Our findings helped the council to improve their response in time for the second lockdown that happened in November 2020. And again, you'll hear more about that later. Similarly, we worked with council commissioners and care home managers to carry out surveys of people living in care homes, their family and friends, what the experience was of visiting them or not being able to visit them, and the staff working in the care homes. And we presented our findings to the council's care home strategy group to help them to identify what was going well and what needed to improve. And again, you'll hear more about that later, and there's more information in our annual report. And of course, we produced a number of reports on the work that we've done. Similarly, sorry about that. We were also pleased to work with another group of T-level students at Croydon College. And although they had to communicate via Zoom, our volunteer and partnerships lead was able to guide them through the whole process of choosing a topic, devising the methodology and survey, analysing and interpreting results, and so on. The topic they chose was the impact of COVID on local residents' mental health, and their findings have been shared with mental health commissioners and have influenced the development of local mental health services. Sorry. Before I move away from COVID, I need to also mention the partnership work that we were involved with in relation to the vaccination programme that you'll remember began in December 2020. The South West London Clinical Commissioning Group's Communications and Engagement team led on publicising the vaccination programme, and they asked us, along with a number of community and voluntary organisations, to help them to target their communications effectively to Croydon's diverse communities. Hopefully you will have seen some of the posters or articles about the COVID vaccination programme, or even attended one of the online meetings where local health and community leaders and clinicians talked to people and answered people's questions about the pros and cons of having a vaccination. But we didn't just focus on the pandemic, we also did a number of other things. For example, in October 2020, at our last annual meeting, we were told via a poll that people were really concerned about a lack of access to dental services. And so we thought hard about what we could do about that, and began by finding out more about Nhs Dental Services and what people can expect or should expect from those services. It took quite a long time to get this project underway, but I'm really pleased to say that we've recently shared our findings with the local dental committee, and we'll be publishing our report soon. So watch our newsletter and our website for the report, which will be worth reading when it gets published. Sometimes, because we're so busy with surveys and responding to requests for help and information, it takes us a while to get round to publishing the reports that we've done. Although during the COVID time, we did prioritise that work and got those reports out in a very timely fashion to be able to help to improve the response to the COVID pandemic. Sometimes we arrange focus groups where we invite a group of people to a meeting to discuss specific topics and feedback anonymously their views to the relevant service or commissioner. During 2021, these focus groups were held online, and one such group was arranged to provide patient insight into an access guide for seldom heard groups, including BME populations, younger people, and refugees. You can see more about that in our annual report. Healthwatch Croydon is also invited to send representatives to a number of local boards, groups and meetings to speak up on behalf of local residents, using the insight that we gather through our work. For those of you who are familiar with these groups, these include statutory boards such as the Health Board, the Health and Wellbeing Board, and various boards and groups within the One Croydon Alliance governance structure, and a number of working groups. A lot of time is spent preparing to go to those boards and then trying to represent the views of local people to those who are able to make a difference. and can improve services on your behalf. During the last year, we've also begun to record more systematically what impact our work has had. Examples of this are given in the then and now part of our annual report. To mention just one, some of our volunteers carried out a review of signage at Croydon University Hospital and fed back their findings to hospital managers, giving examples of where people found it hard to navigate their way around buildings. The hospital responded very positively to our report. They spent a lot of money to improve the signage. They've installed an interactive digital map to help patients to find their way around. And they've asked us to find volunteers for a wayfinding task group to help them to continue to improve the signage and people's access to the hospital. Finally, for now, Healthwatch Croydon is also involved with the other Healthwatch organisations across South West London to maximise our impact on the work undertaken by the NHS and local authorities at the South West London level. In 2021, the year that we're reviewing, the South West London CCG was formed from a merger of borough-based CCGs, and now we're involved in further discussions about the impact of the formation of the South West London Integrated Care Board and Partnership. But you'll hear more about this at our future annual meetings and on our website. So now we're going to hear from the Healthwatch Croydon team. First of all, we're going to hear more about 3 of our projects from Yinka, Robin and Jeet, and then in turn they'll be followed by Gordon, who'll be talking about some of our more recent work that we're doing at the moment. So if I can hand over now to Yinka, please.
Thank you very much, Edwina. My name is Yinka, the engagement lead for Healthwatch Croydon. And I'd like to say, I'll be talking about COVID-19 and how it affected Croydon residents. Before I highlight on our findings and recommendations, I would like to give you a brief on the background. So just as Edwina said previously, we all know 2020 was an unprecedented year. And as a result of this, Healthwatch Croydon could not conduct direct face-to-face engagement with the public. So we were limited to the use of surveys and feedback from our websites to listen to views and experiences of how COVID-19 affected Croydon residents. We launched our survey in April and it was titled, "How has COVID-19 affected you?" We heard from 206 respondents, and what did we find? A lot of people talked about social isolation. They said social isolation caused anxiety and sleeplessness. Residents also had difficulties in getting food online and also the delivery slots. There was a case, and there was another factor which we also found out, which was the impact of death. Many people had to deal with death, sudden death of the family, and this made them grieve because they couldn't support where needed. We also found out that mental health was the most significant concern. There was also a limitation in the access to health and social care. A lot of people could not get appointments. Procedures were cancelled without any information being told to them. Most of these residents also said a lot of the organizations like Croydon Council, Age UK, Croydon Voluntary Action, and all other local communities actually helped them during this time. So based on the findings that I mentioned previously, Healthwatch Croydon has recommended mental health planning. We've also recommended more information on keeping socially isolated in touch with the services they need. We also saw the need to focus more on promoting telephone befriending services like the ones provided by the CVA and HUK. In conclusion, Healthwatch Croydon was able to produce this report on time to provide local insight to Croydon's health and social care services. If you would like to read the full report on this, on the COVID-19, on how COVID-19 affected the residents, please visit the Healthwatch Croydon website. Thanks for listening and thanks for attending our annual meeting. I will pass on to Robin, who will discuss briefly on shielding services. Over to you, Robin. Thank you.
Thanks, Yinka. Good afternoon. So I'm going to talk about the shielding report that we did. So the government had asked vulnerable people to shield from the 23rd of March 2020 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Croydon Council were required to lead the delivery of shielding services for 8,000 residents. We asked One Croydon Alliance if there was any aspects Healthwatch Croydon could provide independent insight to, and it was suggested that shielding was an area where we could be useful. Our report looked back at the service user experience of shielders in Croydon to assess how well the service was delivered and to support future planning should shielding need to begin again. We ran a survey from the 29th of August to the 11th of October online, where we received 70 responses from 720 people that we contacted who needed to shield. And we asked, what had been the respondents' experience of shielding? How effective the council's actions have been in providing information about services, whether shielders needed extra services beyond those initially suggested, and their experience now shielding have been paused, including the use of telephone and video consultations. Our findings based on the responses were food, shopping and medication deliveries were most used. Friends and family met most needs. A quarter of respondents relied on friends and family. Organisation was not always consistent, and communication of services available could have been better. This included 47% needing mental health support and 39% wanting befriending services, reflecting the impact of isolation and loneliness. Others would have welcomed accessing more practical help, with 45% wanting advice with benefits. We found that mental health support is needed after food, excuse the noise. As a result of our isolation, we've got a kitten who is, please excuse me. So shielders were satisfied with the council services. Most shielders are happy with the service they received and wanted to see no change. So our recommendations: don't change your service, enhance and focus it. The service was much appreciated by shielders. Improve communication with shielders, raise awareness of what's on offer, ensure effective monitoring processes, check communications and understand individual needs, tailor support, enhance mental health support where there was a significant unmet need. Focus on those living alone. We found that family and friends are key. So to find ways to ensure all shielders' needs are met. The impact of our report was welcomed by Councillor Jane Avis, Croydon Council's Cabinet Member for Homes and Gateway Services, who said, it is reassuring that Healthwatch has found that those shielding were generally satisfied with the service provided by the council. We later spoke to Lisa Whitley, the Head of Early Intervention and Resident Access at Croydon Council. Lisa told us they learned that they were doing a good job, but mental health and social isolation, more support was needed there, and what the council could improve on if shielding was introduced, as it was. Our report came out just before national restrictions came into force. Lisa told us they used aspects of the report to inform call handlers, focusing on befriending and mental health support, as well as the communications on their website. The Healthwatch report helped the council to focus on areas locally and make a targeted approach. This and all of our reports can be found on our website under the Learn More tab. I'm just so sorry about that noise. And I'm going to pass over now to Jeet, who's going to tell us about the care homes work that we did. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, my name is Jeet. So Healthwatch Croydon took on a project looking at experiences of residents, family, friends and staff in Croydon care homes during COVID-19 pandemic. The work was carried out between August and November this year. So we spoke to residents, care home staff, learning disabled residents, family, friends through online and offline surveys to better understand their experience. The findings and recommendations of these reports resulted in an action plan that was implemented by Croydon Council across all 127 care homes. Some of those actionables included mental health support for staff, support for care home residents on how to improve isolation, best practice for infection prevention control within care homes to allow activities, to ensure family and friends have access to care homes in a safe way, provide guidance to residents on why staff needed PPE, and to increase the use of technology to improve communication with loved ones. And these are just a few of the action points that we have. As with any report, we always ask stakeholders for their thoughts and comments, which we did. But for this report, we reached out to Stephen Hopkins, Head of Children's and Adults Placement and Brokerage, it's a long job title, to have a video commentary for him, which you can watch on our YouTube channel, and also it's on our website. Some of our findings from the report included, so most residents had a good experience, around 90% of those that responded before the pandemic, and then this dropped to 85% after the COVID restriction came in. Residents would like more support in transition to new ways of interaction, social interaction, and have more guidance around the use of PPE. Residents with learning disabilities were happy with the way the care home supported them, but in lockdowns it was less enjoyable, and they felt staffing was not effective, but actually that they went beyond what was expected. Many staff felt no improvements were needed, but their main needs were around access to COVID tests, PPE and mental health support. Overall, across all three reports, our main recommendations were as follows. So to support residents in new ways of social contact and focus on those residents who do not have friends and family links, to bring consistency in approaches to allow socialisation for those with learning disabilities and activities. Residents with learning disabilities would like to have their expectations managed concerning videos and phone access with health professionals in the community, and develop more additional mental health support for all staff, look at ways staff could be recognised and rewarded, good practice to be applied to ensure consistent and relevant communications across care homes, and maintain and enhance current information around PPE testing and support processes for those providers. So thank you, and the links to reports, as we've mentioned, are available on the website, which I will post in the chat.
Hello, I'm Gordon Kay, and I'm the manager of Healthwatch Croydon. There we are. Oh, that's better. It's an unusual situation when we do an annual meeting 6 months into a new year, that it seems such, and this year more than most has been one where so much has happened in the last 18 months. But I'm just going to very briefly mention what's gone on since then, without giving too much away for what will be in next year's annual meeting. So since this time, we have focused on projects concerning vaccine take-up and people's views on vaccination. That's one we're currently in analysis. We covered that over the summer, and we're going to respond back on that. We've also supported the local One Croydon Alliance in their evaluation of the Personal Independence Coordinator Service, which is helping very vulnerable, mostly older people, to become more independent. This has been running for 4 years, and they want to do some evaluation. They're doing a larger project. We contributed to give our sort of independent perspective, and we spoke to, through long interviews, we spoke to 65 users to get their insight, and that's helped in the whole evaluation of the service and its future development. The biggest piece of work we've done this summer, and one of the largest pieces of work we've really done in terms of reach, was an urgent care transformation piece, and it shows here really the partnership that we have had with the local NHS, South West London NHS. We were asked back in May to be involved to contribute insight, should I say, to a transformation project around urgent emergency care, and we, with working in partnership, created a survey which we sent to, of which we got over 1,000 responses to in 5 days using a hospital tech service at Croydon University Hospital. We then turned around a report in a matter of 3 weeks, so that was ready to go, an interim report, should I say, that could be shared with key stakeholders, and we also contributed to further meetings in September. It's a different way of working from how we've used to do things. We used to publish reports and share them at the end. We're now doing a little bit more interim reporting because we need to meet the needs of a fast-moving environment. That's to say, we still do the work at a very high quality. We're very concerned on making sure that we do it well, and even meet challenging deadlines to make sure we can deliver. But it's good that we can feel that we can contribute. And the feedback we got certainly from the urgent care one leaves many potential for future working. Currently, our current survey, and it's still open, is on long COVID. So if anyone said they've been unfortunate enough to experience symptoms after experiencing COVID, the survey is still open. That's another one we are covering. And I'd like to finish with GP access, which I know Edwina mentioned earlier. This was a piece of work we worked with the NHS England's Healthy London Partnership, and they came and met. Again, it was all online, but it was a very good online focus group of 12 very diverse people in Croydon, from different backgrounds, different ages, different ethnicities, talking about their experiences of GP access, mainly to help a guide that was going out to 1,200 GP surgeries across London. We contributed to help shape that guide. We also gave views on that guide, and we also contributed to a webinar, which you can see on the Healthy London Partnership site, to help GPs understand the challenges of access from the patient perspective. And it illustrates the importance, as always, of patient views and patient experiences. I'm glad to say that they were very open to what they heard, and they made changes as a result. I'm going to leave you with the comments that came out of that we produced for that webinar. The voices are actually our volunteers, but what they're voicing is comments that came from that focus group. And I'm going to leave you with that for this particular section, so you can get a sense of what they were saying. You can see the full webinar on the Healthy London Partnership, and also on our website. I don't seem to be able to hear it, so I don't know whether I don't know if others can and I can't. Check a second that it was working earlier. Again, the challenges of our technology, of course, it works one moment and doesn't work the next.
Can you increase the volume, please?
Anything else? Just checking to see whether we. So, just to say that it isn't playing. Thank you for the comment. And we are trying to get it working. I think we're just checking that the sound was working. I do have to say we tested this a number of times before. It's always terrible when these things happen when it's live. It was definitely working an hour ago when we were trialing it. So we're just going to check. It is a pity if we can't hear those. As I say, we're going to try again. I hope we'll get a result this time. No, this is most unfortunate. We're not getting. It's not something we have to link to Zoom here, is there? That we've not clicked. We'll try again one more time. If not, as I say, these were actually the voices edited out of the main webinar, which we do have on our website. So I think we should try again, but if not, we might move on. Although we've got another video section after this. I'm hoping that the audio. I think you might be on speaker headphone. Try that one. No, we don't seem to be getting anything. I'm going to say at this section, I think that we'll move on, hoping that we're going to get the next section is about our volunteers. So I'm going to pass on to because the time is moving on a bit. I'm so sorry you don't get to see that. As I say, you can see it on our website, and it is some really good examples of how patient voice directly can help influence services for this, in this case, across 1,200 GP surgeries across London, Croydon helping London. So we're going to move on to volunteering, and I'm going to pass over to Robin, and hopefully the videos will work for Robin. But maybe Robin just wants to do a brief introduction while those videos are setting up.
Thank you, Gordon. So hopefully now we're going to hear from 3 of our volunteers: Sally, who's a student volunteer; James, who is a Healthwatch Croydon old timer. He's been with us for about 4 years; and Megan, who is an ex Healthwatch Croydon student volunteer. So let's go to those videos and hopefully we can get some volume.
Oh, I don't know what to do.
Okay.
I think maybe what we're going to have to do is move on and actually have these videos on our website if we can, so that people can look at them later. Is that possible?
Yes, I think that might be a good idea. Yes, I think unfortunately it would be great if we could have these.
It would, wouldn't it?
They are on our video. I'd just like to say that there's been some very interesting experiences of how people and how we've managed through the COVID time as well. So I think, oh, hang on. We're going to try and see if we can get some of this.
No, there's no noise.
No, unfortunately, there's no noise. I think, as I say, these videos are on our YouTube channel, and what we will do actually is we will make sure they're already in place, and we will send a link to everyone after the event, because we've got all your details for everyone who attended, so you'll get a chance to see them at some other point. Someone has advised that when you're sharing a video, you have to click a button before you hit share. I have to say, we did test these earlier and they did work. So it is frustrating that they have not. But I'm also aware that we've got other things to cover. So I think we're going to move on. Edwina, if we're moving to the next section on questions to the local leadership board.
That's fine. That's fine. But I'm really sorry, everybody. We did test these earlier, and they did work. So clearly, we've having a bit of difficulty with Zoom. I think one of the difficulties that I find with Zoom is that the people who've created it keep updating it, which is wonderful. Gives extra functionality, but it also means that things that you had learned how to do, you've got to relearn, and it's not always simple. So. Apologies for that, but
Edwina, you need to turn on your screen, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Don't worry.
Right. Okay. Well, that does mean that we have got a bit of time to introduce our local leadership board. I was thinking that we were going to run out of time to be able to talk to them. We were going to have a question and answer session with our local leadership board. On my version of the Q&A, I can't see any open questions at all. So unless there's something wrong with mine, it looks like we haven't got any questions.
I think Elizabeth has raised her hand. So I don't know if whether Elizabeth, with the functionality, and Yogarani has also raised a question. So we've got a couple of questions, but I don't know whether they can actually say them face to face. Linker, or whether it's better for them to do it for the Q&A. Can they speak?
They can use the Q&A button.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Can I introduce the panel first? And
yes, go on.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so the local leadership board is comprised mainly of local people who've got an interest in health and care services. We're very fortunate that a number of our current board members are also volunteers with Healthwatch. I don't know if people can see them on the screen, but we have, I'm just looking to see if I can see them on the screen actually. I can't see everybody.
We're adding them all on. Maybe if Emma and Lucina might want to put their videos on.
Okay, so if leadership board members could put their videos on. We have Pat Knight, who's been a long-standing volunteer with Healthwatch, who is a member of our leadership board. We have Martin Fairs, who's been a member of the leadership board since its inception 2.5 years ago as the deputy chair. I am looking to see if I can see anyone.
If you can hear me, good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. We have Olusina Adeni, who's one of our newer members. He joined us in late 2020.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Olusina Adeni.
Thank you.
Nice to be in this meeting today. Thank you. Yeah.
We have got apologies from Anantha Ramaswamy, who's one of our long-standing board members, and from Michael Lowell, who again joined us in 2020. Both of them are abroad at the moment, not together, I hasten to add, but because of time zone differences, they're not able to join us today. And we have Emma Leatherbarrow, who's the Director of Partnerships from Help and Care, who's also on our board to advise us and keep us in line, really. We also need to give thanks to Brian Matthews and Tariq Salim, who were board members during 2020, but had for different reasons had to stand down during the year, and to thank them for their time and their commitment to Healthwatch. Now, I can see that we have a question from Yogarani, and if I click this button here, it may allow you to talk. So I don't know if you can ask your question, can you? Or not? Maybe not.
Maybe if they could type it into the, if Yogarani could type it into the Q&A, then we can pick it up from there, or the chat.
And you said that someone else had a question as well.
No, it was a misclick,
oh, right,
apparently.
Okay. Fine, okay. So whilst we're trying to get hold of that question, is there anybody on the board who would like to say anything? I realise this is not quite what you thought you were going to be doing, but any comments from anybody? No?
Just to say that Emma and Olusina are having technical trouble with their video, so they can't turn on their screens as much as they would like to.
Okay, oh dear, we're having trouble with this Zoom today, aren't we? Okay.
I really can't wait to return to a face-to-face meeting, hopefully in future years.
Looks like Yogarani can now speak. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Do you want to ask your question or make your comment?
Yeah. Yes, please. I worked with the Healthwatch long ago. 2-3 times they given me a funding. And then last year, One Croydon Alliance, they gave me 2 years funding. They suddenly stopped. How can I apply? And Golden worked with us. He's chat with our families and everything. We have a lot of barriers in the language barriers. We are in Tamils, and the English is a second language. That's the reason we apply, and those days we got a funding. Then I don't know how to apply. So in future, we are grassroots funding. Golden work with us is a very good opportunity for us. And we gave anything, please let us know.
Okay. Gordon, thank you very much for that question. So Gordon, can you respond about what the grassroots funding was about and whether it's available at the moment?
The grassroots funding was funding that came from South West London NHS about 4 years ago, and it was, we were given us a pot. I think all South West London health watchers were given a pot to, I think it was about £10,000 that we could allocate to, and we had to deliberately go out and find organisations that we'd not heard of. And actually, I think we had to promote it, and then people put in bids. And I know you were a very successful bid, and you organised the event, and we came along. And then more recently, we just got some funding from Healthwatch England to do a similar project, and it was great to work with you again. And it was wonderful, really, that the grassroots, that you remembered us from the previous grassroots, and that we could build up a rapport and do this recent piece of work, which is just done in the few weeks. About the accessibility information standard. In terms of, I mean, this funding, we obviously have our core funding, but a lot of the funding that we've done with Project Review have come from other sources like South West London. And I just think it's something, it's a good question, I think, for the panel later on. We're not in, we get our core allocation, and the leadership board advise on how we should spend it and what we should work on. It just so happens that the two pieces of work you've done have come from funding that we have received from a third party. That's not to say that we shouldn't do more. And I think what we have come to realise from doing this recent work on the accessibility information standard is actually how many little groups there are out there that we didn't know about. We knew about you, but we've been working with others. For example, we've just heard there's a whole community of Spanish speakers in the north of the borough of Croydon, which, I'll be honest with you, we did not know that much about before. So I think it's opening new opportunities. I think as a board, will think of ways that we could do funding and look at ways of this. And we will try and encourage other stakeholders who to be fair, have perhaps budgets for this kind of thing to also consider it. I know that the idea of doing grassroots again is on an agenda somewhere. Obviously, South West London going through a big transformation at the moment with the organisation at ICS. Maybe on the other side there will be engagement. They are very committed to wanting to do more to look into avoiding and preventing health inequalities, and I think that's something which would help. Well, we've proven it's helped before with previous grassroots.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. So if you don't mind, I'll ask the question this afternoon later on when we get onto our health and care panel, and see if we can get any more information for you from there. So thank you very much for that. Now, given our technical difficulties, we are running a little bit behind time now. And so what I'd like to do is thank very much the local leadership board members who are here today for their time. And I'm really sorry that we weren't able to have much of a question and answer session this time. But what I'm very keen to do is to leave time to be able to introduce our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Felicity Flynn, who's very kindly come along today, logged in today to our meeting, and has also kindly agreed to say a few words to us. So if I could hand over to you, Councillor, there we are. Thank you very much.
Sorry, you need to unmute yourself, please.
Oh, I'm very sorry. Yeah, thank you, Edwina, and thank you to all of your wonderful speakers. It's been very informative and very inspirational. Obviously, in recent times, health has been a huge issue. I mean, many people say that there's been two pandemics happening simultaneously. There's been the COVID pandemic, as well as a growing mental health pandemic, with a lot of people suffering from isolation, and as a result it's exacerbating poor mental health. And I can see that you're doing a lot of great work in tackling this these terrible problems, so thank you very much, and please carry on with the great work. You're doing an excellent job for the people of Croydon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really helpful, and thank you for your comments and support to us. We have just got time to run another poll before we move on to a bit of mindfulness. And I'm wondering if somebody could put the next poll up on the screen. I'm hoping that more people will be able to access it this time, so that, there we are. So it's on my screen. I hope it's on other people's screens. It says, what would you like us to focus on next? And there's a choice of options, and it's multiple choice, so you're not restricted to just one. The options are GPs, hospital, social care, community services, and by that we mean voluntary services, and dentistry. So if people could respond by saying which of those they feel there are issues about that they would like us to focus on next in our project work, and we'll explore that further with a view to looking at what we can do. If you're not able to see and respond to the poll, but you have got comments, perhaps you could put them in the chat function and we can pick them up later. We're clearly having difficulties with our Zoom today. And I can see now that there is a question in the question and answer, so we'll respond to that in writing. People should be able to pick up the answer to that. But the poll isn't open. It says results, it says here. Oh, it says poll ended.
Let's
Could we
try
change
again.
it to being open? There we go. So it's now open if people want to have a go.
I think it's the same. It's the result that is showing on the screen.
Right. My
Yes,
one,
it does say
yes,
it does
still
say
says
poll
poll
ended.
ended here.
Oh, you may have to click off it again. Sorry. If you had it, then you might need to click, it might need to come up again. Can we try it again, please?
No, it still says poll ended.
Oh, it's actually showing from my end for some funny reason.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, clip stop sharing. Oh, there we are. The share
No.
result. Oh, there we are. It seems to be running again.
It still says poll ended.
Yeah, I think you might have to click stop sharing.
Stop sharing, right?
If you stopped, and then it should hopefully
No.
start again. No.
No, it still says poll ended.
Yeah, we're really having a day of.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, would people mind if you can just put in the chat function which option you particularly feel
Yes.
we should focus on, and we'll have to count them up later and look and see what the favoured option is. If you want to put any additional comments about your particular experience or those of your friends, family, or whatever, that would be helpful. Somebody's written GP services, so if anybody else wants to add anything, then that would be really helpful, and we'll come back to it later on. Somebody's mentioned the diabetic service in Croydon as being something that people have expressed concerns about. So again, keep putting things in the chat function and we'll pick these up later.
Edwina,
Yeah?
while they're doing that, while everyone's doing that, I just thought I could answer that question that came through as a Q&A just as we moved for the Deputy Mayor. So we had a question which was, you mentioned that you're carrying out numerous surveys impacted on getting actual findings reports published. Is Healthwatch doing too many surveys on its own with a relatively small response? Do you think you should consider coming together with other appropriate organisations to carry out surveys and enabling in response and increasing opportunity for follow-up action? And thank you for that question. Well, indeed, we are doing that. I mean, obviously, a lot of the surveys we did here where we got relatively small responses was down to the challenges of either a very small group or obviously the height of COVID. I mean, it's very challenging during lockdown. I think the project we've just done this year with urgent emergency care illustrates the real good of partnership working. Here, we managed to work with the hospital and with the local Southwest London NHS, and we got a reach that we had never thought we would get because they agreed to use their hospital tech service to contact everyone that had used A&E services in the previous 6 months. As a result, we got 1,000 responses in 5 days, which is without a shadow of a doubt the largest, fastest, quickest survey we've ever done. So that's an illustration of what can do when you've got partnership working, and I'm happy to say that as a case study of good partnership working. So thank you for raising that question, Angela. I agree. We're happy to work with others. It's far easier if we can connect with people who are closer and I can, as I can say, with the work we've just recently done with the empowering Tamil families, there is no way we would have been able to speak to 6 people whose English was not their first language, who has very little English at all, if it hadn't been working very well with yoga and her interpreter at empowering Tamil families. So yes, partnership working is everything. We're very committed to doing it, and we might welcome opportunities to work with people and go out and see people and hear their views.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon. There is a follow-up question from Angela in the Q&A about the response from care home owners with regard to the findings. I do know that following our reports, that there's been an action plan produced, hasn't there? And we are following up to see that the action plan is being implemented. I don't know if you want to say any more, Gordon, about that. Sorry, I think you're on mute.
I am muted. Oh.
There you go.
Again, the care homes one is another fantastic example of partnership working. And I have felt the difference in that. Funnily enough, the result of COVID has meant that we've been doing nearly every piece of our work has now had more enhanced partnership working. This came out of discussions with the council after the discussion of our earlier pieces of work. And we got involved in becoming a regular attendee to the care home strategy. We still have a representative. Pat on the board is our regular representative now. We were never on that board before COVID came along, but we became part of it, and we went in and we talked about the survey and we tested the survey and we spoke. And I also went to there's a separate care homes information group where the managers talk about information, less about strategy. I attended that. I got their views. We stress tested the survey. We ran the survey. We fed back on the survey. We've heard feedback, and consistently partnership at all levels. It takes a lot of time and sometimes a bit of patience to sort especially when you get different views from different people, and you've got to think, how am I going to turn that into a survey? How are we going to turn that into actions? But actually the results have been good. And as I say, if you watch the Stephen Hopkins video, you'll see the impact. We actually did get an action plan out of that. So yes, we're happy to do more of this. And I think this year, I'd say, Edwina, we've done much more of this than we really had ever done before, and feel much more part of the community while still maintaining our independence, which is really an important part of what Healthwatch is about. Okay,
thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I think after that rather hectic first hour, the team needs a bit of a change of pace. I don't know about anybody else. So what I'd like to do now is to hand over to Martin Fairs, our Deputy Chair, for a bit of mindfulness. And I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but I'm sure it will be a positive experience. So Martin, are you there? I can't actually see. Oh,
yes,
there you are. Lovely.
I am here. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. And it does seem to me that after the kind of we've had with our ups and downs, that maybe a little period of mindfulness would be a good idea. And I guess it's tempting to see this session as a bit of a soft session between the first half and the second half of our meeting. But actually, when you think about it, it's actually very relevant, because I would suggest to you that mindfulness is about learning to be in the present. It's about learning to recover ourselves. It's about learning to regain our resilience. And I don't know about you, but both through my work in Healthwatch as Deputy Chair and seeing all the work that's going on around Croydon, but also I actually work as a leadership coach within health services and also the international relief sector. And I find an awful lot of people telling me about and reporting about feeling pretty exhausted, yes, feeling pretty tired out, feeling pretty empty, and feeling almost like batteries that feel run down, giving out an awful lot to people and actually not getting very much back. And that's where I really think that there's a connection between mindfulness and between all the work, the terrific work that's going on around Croydon with all your services in actually giving out to people. So what I propose to do, this is a very brief session. We're just going to experience some mindfulness, something which in fact is entirely voluntary. You may wish to go along with me on this, or you may wish not to. And I'm going to focus on the theme. One of the themes within mindfulness is actually gratitude. And gratitude is important because gratitude is about understanding what we are receiving ourselves, or indeed what we may need to receive. And actually, if I can just mention a research aspect to this, there's heaps of research now internationally which shows that learning to be grateful in our lives is actually heavily associated with very positive mental health and also very positive physical health. So there is, in a sense, a backing to this. So it's not purely a soft thing, it's something which can really, really make a difference. So we're just going to run through very simply, and I'd like each of you, please, to just make sure you're sitting in a very comfortable position, very importantly. And I'd like you, please, we will be no more than 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes. Just make sure that either your gaze is just a little bit dropped in front of you, or indeed you may wish to close your eyes. So just sit comfortably, eyes closed, gaze lowered. And as you sit, just become aware, firstly, of your body, become aware of your feet on the ground, the connectedness. Be aware of maybe your buttocks on your seat, and be aware of your hands, whether they're in your lap, on your table. Just this sense of the connectedness between your body and what is around you. Very good. And then just briefly focusing on your breath. And just breathing very naturally and allowing that natural rhythm of your breathing to just slow you down. And just becoming aware of yourself in the present. And maybe any sounds around you as well. If they're there, they're there. And just enjoy them. Very good. And now we're going to move into an appreciation of things that we receive. And I'm going to work through people with you and places. And what I'd like you to do, please, is to take your left hand, and I'd like you to actually just hold your thumb of your left hand with your right hand. Just gently hold your thumb. Just feel that connectedness. And I want you now to identify somebody in your life, it may be either present or past, who means something to you. Somebody who gives you something, somebody who sustains you. Somebody with whom you really enjoy being. And somebody with whom you can relax. It may be a colleague, it may be a friend, it may be a partner, an acquaintance. It might even be the friendly face of the postman who comes up your drive every day. We have one where I live, and I look forward to his visit. So just identify somebody in your life who gives you something very positive. And as you do this, I want you to see what you see. Maybe you can see their face. Hear what you hear. Maybe you can hear their voice. And feel what you feel as you're with them. And that feeling may be in any part of your body. It may be strong, it may be weak. Just experience for a moment what you gain from that person by having them near to you. Then I want you just to squeeze your thumb. Squeeze your thumb. And as you do so, just offer thanks to that person for what they give you. Very good. And now secondly, place. I'd like you to move to your index finger on your left hand. And I'd like you to just cup that, hold that gently with your right hand. And now I'd like you to identify and just take yourself to somewhere that you find you can gain peace and you can gain a re-energy. And it could be anywhere. It could be something that you enjoy doing. It could be somewhere out of doors, somewhere that you enjoy nature, either around where you live or maybe further afield. And haven't we had magnificent colors in the trees very recently? Wonderful. It may be an activity that you enjoy. It may be music, maybe something artistic or sporting, active. Whatever it is, just take yourself there. And again, as you do this, you see perhaps a picture, maybe color, maybe monochrome, still or movie. Just give yourself a picture of being there. Enjoy being there in the here and now. Experience maybe what you hear and feel what you feel in any part of your body. And then I want you again to squeeze the finger. Feel that sense of connection that you're making for yourself. And I want you to thank yourself this time for nourishing yourself, for giving yourself something that will replenish you so that you're better able to give to others. And then just release, just release. And I'd like you just to go back now to the position you started in, just feeling again that sense of connection between your body and the floor or your chair or the back of the chair or your hands. And just for a moment, enjoying the sense of your breath moving slowly inwards and outwards, that rhythm. Then finally, just hold your hands up in the air, apart. We're going to come back now, going to re-energize ourselves for the second half of our meeting. And when I tell you now, I want you just to clap your hands quite hard and bring them back to where we started. So now, clap your hands, bring them back. And as we do this, I want you to feel the energy, the tingling within those hands, within your fingers and your thumbs, on the surface, down into your hands, into your forearms, energizing yourselves, and then slowly opening your eyes. Thank you. That was very brief. That was a taster. If anybody wants to know more about mindfulness, please get in touch with me through Healthwatch. Thank you, everybody, and I'll hand back to Edwina.
Well, thank you very much, Martin. I'm feeling much more relaxed and trying not to get anxious about the fact that I'm now running behind time, but never mind, nothing's perfect. Now, that was really good. Thank you very much for doing that. I'm sure everybody's feeling much better now. Thanks. Okay, so I hope you're all feeling relaxed, but awake and alert and able to participate in the second half of the meeting, where we're going to be looking more at our work with partners and asking them to speak about their own services. So, and to answer questions later. First of all, we've got Francesca Domain, a rapid response matron from Croydon Health Services, who's also a Darcy Fellow, it says here. Is that correct? Can't actually see Francesca on the screen at the moment.
Hi.
Oh, there you are. Lovely. Okay, so over to you then, to
Hi,
whatever you're going to talk about. Thank you.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Francesca. I'm now the Darcy Fellow. I was previously the Telehealth project lead and the rapid response matron for Croydon, and I actually led the technology-enabled digital innovation virtual wards that allowed us to care for acutely unwell patients at home in Croydon. I should start by explaining everything. When I say virtual wards, what I'm referring to is actually the service that the patient went under. And when I talk about telehealth, because we swing these words about, I'm referring to the digital technology device that the patient actually wore on their upper arm. The telehealth device that we had in Croydon basically provided continuous data on vital signs such as oxygen saturations, respiratory rate, heart rate of the patient, the skin temperature, and it correlated it with movement, step count, because those movement will affect the data that we're getting. It also allowed for the patient to send additional readings of things such as blood pressure and weight if and when required. And it allowed for the clinician doing the monitoring to identify health trajectory of patients. Oh, my video seems to have turned off. There we go, is my video back? Lovely. Okay. Sorry, where was I? So it allowed the clinician to identify the health trajectory of the patient. It's important to know, in Croydon we used continuous data, and it's something that we found very beneficial in helping to monitor these acutely unwell patients at home. So an overview, the virtual ward, it sits within Croydon Health Services in our community, within our rapid response team. That's where we embedded the service. The rapid response team, in order to extend the managing of the virtual ward, we employed myself as a part-time dual role rapid response matron and the lead, and also a rapid response GP. The model of our virtual ward, it focused on admission avoidance and supporting hospital flow and discharges, and enabled patients to be cared for safely at home. We actively monitored our patients on the virtual ward between 8 AM and 8 PM, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So it didn't stop running. And we allocated an experienced member of staff within the rapid response team to actually monitor those patients on the virtual ward. That's important to note that it was the person within the rapid response team, because if that person required escalation, it was the same person or one person within the team doing the home visits as well. So continuity of care was there. The health profession monitoring, as I say, looked at the continuous data that was being pulled in from the patient to identify trends and how their health trajectory was going. Were they improving? Were they deteriorating? Were they staying the same? We could get that view of the patient, and we could see that on our dashboard and our computers, but also if we were out and about on home visits, we could see it on our mobile apps as well. Referrals, well, we accepted referrals from all health professionals really, including, which was quite significant, the London Ambulance Service, GPs, ED, care, ward staff, and more, lots of health professionals. To give an overview of the deployment of the virtual ward, we admitted our first patient in July 2020, and we had a slow increase of numbers, as you would expect over summer, while we worked with patients to support them at home. And it was during this time that we could begin to see the bigger vision and what the telehealth device could do and its potential in supporting patients and how it could support secondary care as well. By October 2020, we saw rapid increase in numbers of patients on the virtual ward, and by January 2021, obviously in the height of pandemic again, the virtual ward was full with acutely unwell patients all being managed safely in their own home. And these were patients that otherwise potentially could have been in hospital. So the pathways we developed, well, we divided it into two groups, as you would expect, either COVID or non-COVID. For the COVID virtual ward, we developed our COVID model of care. This is quite significant for us because it really helped direct direction of care for that patient. It enabled us to monitor COVID patients who were at risk of deterioration following their initial diagnosis of COVID, so pre-hospital. those who needed supportive hospital discharge, so they've been in hospital with COVID, they just needed that little bit of support getting back home and feeling safe and ensuring they're improving. We also had those who had prolonged sort of COVID symptoms that were still quite acute and needed more monitoring, so sort of similar category really. And also we took on the more complex, this was quite significant for us, patients who were still on oxygen in hospital. We provided an early supportive discharge for oxygen weaning at home, and that was under sort of more care with support from our Croydon respiratory team as well, with that the oxygen side. The non-COVID virtual ward was more focusing on patients who were having acute exacerbation of their long-term conditions. So, you know, breathing conditions, heart conditions, and more. It should also be said that all patients on the virtual ward were called minimum daily, either via video or via telephone call, as part of their sort of virtual ward review. So as you know, patients on the ward get a daily review. Same on our virtual ward. They still got their review by the health professional. Their observations, obviously we're getting continuous data coming in. We made sure that at 2-hourly intervals, we were checking each patient. Patients were also discussed in a weekly MDT, which included the telehealth lead, so that was myself, the allocated monitoring clinician. If it wasn't me doing it, if it was another clinician, then they would be in there as well, the rapid GP, consultant geriatrician, respiratory team. We had a consultant specialising in COVID there as well to help with COVID patients. You know, we had risk stratification in place with automated alarms, so patients had parameters set and they would alarm if they went outside the parameters, and it would alert the health professional to get in contact with that patient. We had a 2-hour response time. Patients also had the ability to alert us, because although we get data, we can't understand how people feel. They need to tell us that, and therefore there was the opportunity for patients to alert us and tell us how they were feeling. So what have we achieved so far? Well, by the end of August this summer, we had over 300 patients had completed their journey through the virtual ward. This accounted for over 3,000 days worth of monitoring that could potentially have been in-hospital monitoring. We've identified significant clinical findings where we've been able to refer patients on to appropriate services to have that investigated. And most importantly, I think we were giving patients, you know, the right care at the right time in the right place, safely. So, you know, if they could remain at home and kept them at home, if they needed escalation for home visits or outpatients or even inpatient, we would escalate accordingly. They were being kept safe. I think there are many benefits for patients and staff alike. And if we, you know, focus on the patient here, you know, we're reducing the risk of COVID transmission. We are allowing the patient to mobilise within their own home. If they were in hospital, you're confined to your bed space almost, especially currently with pandemic. So we're allowing patients to be able to mobilise more, to eat their own food, to use their own bathroom, to have improved sleep. They're not being disturbed by bells and noise on the ward. As much as we try and be quiet, it's impossible in a hospital to be silent. So, you know, we're allowing patients to remain within their own community, surrounded by their own support network, which is important for health. You know, as a Darcy Fellow, for further development of virtual ward, that's something I'm actually focusing on as part of my Darcy Challenge. So I am looking at what Croydon actually needs from a virtual ward now going forward, and I'm hoping to achieve this looking at, you know, co-production, so working with patients and staff alike. We know people's needs are better met when they are involved, and effective change comes from when services and communities actually come together. So that is a focus that I'm going to be taking with the virtual wards now. I'd like to finish probably with a few quotes from patients, you know, which I think really show that what we've done, you know, is helping, but there's obviously, you know, further to go with this. We've had things like, we were so lucky with mum being monitored. We really appreciated her being able to stay at home. You saved my husband's life. When I was most unwell, I knew that I was being looked after. I did not have to do anything, just think about getting better. And finally, this has only been possible due to the trust our patients have had in our service, and also due to the dedication of the rapid response team in helping to build and create this virtual ward. So if anyone, wants to know more or wants to, discuss ideas with me, obviously get in contact. I'm always looking for ways to discuss and learn and develop. So thank you for listening. I hope I've sort of answered things that you wanted to know about the virtual ward and our service here.
Okay, that's lovely, Francesca. Thank you very much. That's a very, very good first presentation, and really good luck in being a Darcy Fellow. That's great. Thank you. So we now have a perspective from a GP about new developments and whatever Dr. Emily Symington would like to talk to us about. Dr. Emily Symington's been very heavily involved in the One Croydon Alliance and many other things, and I'm sure she's going to tell us about some of that just now. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Edwina. Thank you for that introduction. I hope everybody can hear me. Please, somebody pipe up if I haven't turned my mute off properly or my connection's not good. As Edwina said, I'm a Croydon GP. I work in Thornton Heath. Work throughout the majority of the pandemic, although I did actually go on maternity leave for a chunk of it, which was an interesting experience in its own right. But that's not the topic for today. But I'm also heavily involved in the One Croydon Alliance. I'm a GP leader for Croydon Place in the CCG, and in that role I chair the Proactive and Preventative Care Board for the One Croydon Alliance, and it's that I particularly wanted to talk to you about today, and really kind of the move from the One Croydon Alliance to work with the community to prevent ill health. This is something that the One Croydon Alliance and all health and social care in Croydon has been talking about for a long time, and the pandemic certainly didn't bring that about, but the pandemic has put a very different perspective on what it means to work with the community to prevent ill health. And in some ways, maybe we can see it as a silver lining. It's accelerated some of the changes that we were bringing about, and we've just heard about telemedicine and the great things that can offer. And I think that's a fantastic example of where the pandemic has brought forward changes that we were already looking to make, but has definitely given us new drive and impetus. So just to tell you a little bit more about the Proactive and Preventative Care Board and what we are, we're a One Croydon Alliance board, which means that we're made up of the CCG, of the council, Croydon Health Services, so that includes obviously the hospital, Croydon University Hospital, the GPs of Croydon, the SLAM, our Mental Health Trust, and the voluntary sector. And Healthwatch is a very active member of the Proactive and Preventative Care Board, and we really appreciate the contribution that Healthwatch makes in terms of bringing the patient and community voice, along with several other community members who sit on the board. And we sit under the banner of proactive and preventative care, and I'll explain what that means just briefly. We're all about trying to avoid ill health and keeping people well. Now, we know that health and social care should always be thinking about these things, but sometimes because there is so much acute stuff to deal with, because people are so busy and so pressurized, the idea of being preventative and trying to avoid ill health and keeping people well and keeping people at home actually sometimes slips down the agenda. And part of our role in the Proactive and Preventative Care Board is bringing that back to the top of the agenda, reminding people of how important that is, and also how we engage with real people about their health. People in many situations have the solutions to their healthcare and the solutions to what they need themselves. And it is so important that health and social care engage with people, talk to people about what they need, about how services could be changed. A lot of the work that Healthwatch does itself, so that we can make sure that services meet people's needs and work with people, because we've all got a personal responsibility on a daily basis to keep ourselves well, keep ourselves healthy, whether we're fit and healthy individuals or whether we're living with some sort of a long-term condition or disability. But we need services to work with us to help us to do that. And that's part of our role in the Proactive and Preventative Care Board, is to try and make sure that's happening. So just to run through, and I'm going to to mention a few different things we've been up to and hopefully give a few good examples of where we've made a difference. There's a huge amount, so I'm going to try and touch on bits and pieces briefly rather than boring you all for hours. So one of the things that's come up recently is the refresh of the health and care plan. Not surprisingly, like many other areas, Croydon has got a plan for what we intend to do. And we've been very heavily involved in refreshing that plan over the last few months, and particularly making sure that some of the important things that came up during the pandemic have been put front and centre of the healthcare plan. And I'm thinking particularly about mental health and trauma, about healthy weight, about falls and frailty, areas that are really important to people, where we need to take a proactive and a preventative approach, and we've made sure that those are front and centre in the health and care plan going forward. We've also been getting involved very heavily in a bit of a buzzword in the NHS at the moment, something called population health management. What does that mean? What it means is using the data that we've got about our population in Croydon and about how people live and the kind of health challenges that people face, and making sure that we're using that data properly to provide services, to address people's needs, and particularly picking up on groups of people that may be more vulnerable, maybe struggling to access the services we're providing. And that's a piece of work that's taking place across the whole of Croydon at the moment. And in the Proactive and Preventative Care Board, we're particularly involved in that. Another piece of work that we are very heavily involved with and have put together is something called the Croydon Prevention Framework. Now, the prevention framework is something that we've written ourselves in Croydon, and made a commitment as a One Croydon Alliance to make sure that it underpins all the work that we do, all the services that we commission, all the care that is provided to the people of Croydon. And you know, as it sounds, it's all about how we can make sure that services focus on preventing ill health and preventing problems as they arise. Now, as you can imagine, that is a huge piece of work. We've chosen to pull out a few key areas. I mentioned them earlier around mental health, around healthy weight, around immunisations, around falls and frailty, so that we've got an area of focus where we can measure ourselves against and make sure that we're making progress in providing more preventative care. Moving on to some things that have really come to fruition in the last year, and I'm going to give you some examples. Our long-term conditions work stream, this is something that we've really championed in the Proactive and Preventative Care Board. Piece of work that is focused on people living with long-term conditions, particularly around diabetes and hypertension, but not solely focused on that. And it's been a really nice piece of work bringing together the GPs of Croydon to support them to take a more proactive approach to managing these long-term conditions, and also the community and voluntary sector, and really getting into communities, raising awareness about these kind of long-term conditions, awareness about the importance of being tested and how you can get yourself tested if you're worried that you might have diabetes or high blood pressure, and also a program called the Expert Patient Program, which is a piece of work which works with people living with any long-term condition, to give people a space to talk about what it's like to live with a long-term condition, and to think about how to keep well, how to live a healthy and fulfilled life, and to keep your long-term condition under control, so that it's there in the background, but it's not running your life. And just want to pull out.
Really interesting, but unfortunately we're going to run out of time. So
can I give you a quick example, Edwina, and then I will run away?
All right, quick example. Go on then.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm running away with myself. But what I just wanted to say is that we've had several case studies back from people taking place in our part in our Expert Patient Program, and one particularly, which was, you know, a lady who was really struggling with her mental health in association with her long-term condition, and said that she was really at her wit's end when she joined the program. But the program gave her so much hope that and she feels better. She's re-engaged with her garden. She's re-engaged with doing things around the house, and she really credits the programme with having saved her from a further deterioration in her mental health and possibly even taking her own life. So I feel really pleased that we've been able to bring this programme to Croydon. Hope that it will benefit lots more people to come. And if anyone listening would like to get involved, then please do let us know, because there are places available, and it's something that we would like everybody in Croydon to have an opportunity to take part in. Anyway, thank you, Edwina, for giving me a few more moments, and I will hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Emily. We can see the enthusiasm that you're expressing there for the work that you're doing. And thank you very much for all the time that you put into this, because it clearly is showing benefits. So thank you. We are unfortunately running a bit short of time. We have 2 more people still to speak before we have our panel. We've got Paul Wallingford next from Croydon Council, who's going to give a sort of social care perspective. Paul, I hope you don't mind, but could you please be relatively brief in your presentation, please? Thank you.
I can be really brief. Basically, I was asked to think of, the challenges of COVID and something positive that came out of it. And hopefully people can just see the one brief slide that I've got on the screen. So basically, Active Lives, which would have been day services in the old days, was asked to close in March 2020 because of the lockdown. And staff were diverted into extra care frontline services, which was fantastic that they had the skills to do that and to prop up that service. Our challenge really was that we didn't want the 150 people or so that we support to feel too isolated. So we talked to them, as we always do, because we're person-centred, and we co-produced Friends Connect. And that started off basically allowing people to keep in touch. We spent a lot of time helping them use Teams, the Teams app. So that was fantastic that the council had just got that on the go just before COVID. And that led into a far greater virtual offer, because lockdown went on for some time. And even when we were sort of reintroducing bubble working, physical working, we were still able to do the virtual work. Those that know us know that we got a really good relationship with the Brit School. So the photograph there is the Brit School got involved and supported drama sessions. So we kept it going. The show must go online, as it says down there. What was the learning? The learning from that was that if we talk to the people that we support, they'll always help you come up with ideas, and we always do that. We were flexible. The fact was that rather than thinking about we're closed, staff have diverted off, what we're going to do, feeling sorry for ourselves, when you pick yourself up and dust yourself down, you can always find ways of engaging, even in difficult times. And the virtual offer is something that we don't want to go away. So there's many ways we've learned to engage with the people with learning disabilities and autism and other disabilities that we support now, where we integrate the virtual offer into what we're doing. So it was a really difficult time, and people have come back to the services now, but we've learned a lot through the lockdown. And so as difficult as it was, sometimes you can gain positives out of it. Is that all right? That's under 5, I reckon.
That's brilliant, Paul. Thank you very much. Thank you. And that's a really lovely
Annette won't
service.
believe that I could stick to 5 minutes, so she might give me a Twix or something, maybe. I don't know.
Brilliant. Or even 2 Twixes. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. That's smashing. Thanks very much, Paul.
Just to highlight though, sorry, if people read the slide, good practice example, we were highlighted. So just in case people haven't read the slide that's on the screen, it was highlighted as some good practice.
Wonderful. That's
Cheers.
good. And quite right too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you. So now we're going to move over to hear from the voluntary and community sector from James Moore, who is currently one of our community facilitators and an NHS social prescribing link worker, I believe. So James, I'm not sure how we take down this slide from Paul. So apologies for that. But again, would you mind being relatively brief, please? Sorry about that.
No, there's no need to apologise. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, this is just me sharing a a small diagram. Thank you very much for inviting me today. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with Healthwatch, see some new faces and some friendly ones, all friendly, but some new, excuse me. Yes, so I've been a community facilitator for the past just over 4 months now. And it's just really great honor to be here and be asked to speak about some of this work. The theme of today's AGM, as I gather, was about enabling positive change. And I think I'm really, that sense of enabling positive change is really palpable in the room today. I came at about 1, so it was great to start off with some mindfulness from Martin, and then to hear the really encouraging work from GP colleagues. So a little bit about what I've been doing as a community facilitator, in line very much with One Croydon at the proactive and preventative care stuff that was really eloquently put just before me, and very much the sort of national plan for the next few years, and that's about integrating voluntary care sector with the health and social care sector, and bringing together also those in primary and secondary care health, so to speak. So that's been really exciting to cross the different boundaries, if you like, from playing between the lines of MDTs and community hubs, and then down on the very grassroots. And so one of the things that we've been working on is to basically link in with already existing assets in our communities, community hubs, community centres, whether they be churches or voluntary group organisations, and creating a clear pathway which works both ways into maybe even acute care, but I was thinking more MDTs with social workers, occupational therapists, those who have just got those questions in those health spaces, what's local, what can we do? This gentleman or woman doesn't have enough, resource or a carer to do this, that or the other. Well, let's find out what's in the community. Let's go to a local community hub. And we've seen some fantastic examples where, volunteers have started to work with social workers, visiting some elderly, isolated people. And we've seen some interesting case studies from our community hubs as well. One in particular, the Central West locality, where a lady was referred into the community hub who is blind and doesn't have any family or advocacy support, and was living, or still is living, in supported accommodation, adjusting to all of that. She's in her mid-20s. Her rent arrears were getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. If anyone's dealt with universal credit, that can sometimes take some time. And this was all impacting her neurological, psychological problems that she was having at the time, as well as not having that sort of appropriate, adequate care package to really meet her needs. And once she was referred into that community hub, I just was dancing between the lines of the NDT and the voluntary and community sector, and just, creating a little bit of a circle together with the resident, very much with her in the focus of what we were doing. But she is, I think, a part of that proactive and preventative strategy that was really well put before me. I just think this is a really good example of that, because things could have gotten a lot worse if there was not the same response that we saw with myself raising it in places like One Croydon MDTs and in the voluntary and community sector. We've just seen a rapid response to some of the key issues that were causing such a deteriorating effect on this lady. But ever since then, we've been following her lead, her resilience, her patience, her bookkeeping. It's been remarkable. So we can keep gathering evidence that this model works, and we can, break down these silos in health and sometimes in the voluntary and community sector as well, and create a real collaborative approach to this piece of work. So once again, thank you very much for inviting me today. Just to mention, a huge thank you to Healthwatch with all of the work that you've been doing, particularly myself on a personal note with some of the sessions we did in social prescribing earlier this year, and some of the pieces of work I've been doing with Martin and Anantha, and of course Edwina yourself. So thanks very much, and I will have to go now, but it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you very much, James. That's been really interesting and a nice way of rounding off the presentations from our partner agency. So thank you very much. Thank you. So that's been a really quick overview of some of the developments that have happened across health and care and voluntary services in the last year or so. We've now got a little bit of time to have some questions to our panel. I'm just looking to see if all of our panelists are here. I think so. So amongst the panelists, we have Annette McPartland, who's on my screen at the moment, from the council. Annette, could you introduce yourself, please, and then we'll go on the panelists.
Thank you. Thanks, Edwina. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Annette McPartland. I'm the interim corporate director for adult social care.
Thank you. And we have Sarah Burns from CVA. Sarah, would you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Edwina. Yeah, I'm Sarah Burns, Head of Communities for Croydon Voluntary Action, working alongside James. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. We have Dr. Agnello Fernandez. I can't see you at the moment. Oh, there you are. Lovely. Could you introduce yourself, please, Agnello?
Thanks, Edwina. Agnello Fernandez, a GP in Croydon and the GP Borough Lead for Croydon for South West London CCG.
Smashing. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Matthew Kershaw from Croydon Health Services. Could you introduce yourself, please, Matthew?
Of course. Hi, everybody. It's Matthew Kershaw here. I'm Chief Executive at Croydon Health Services and Place-Based Leader for Health here in the borough.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, we don't have many questions for the panel today. So just reminding people, this is your opportunity. If you want to ask questions of our panel, then just type something into the question and answer box. We have had some questions submitted in advance. You won't be surprised to hear. So if you don't mind, I just launch into one and then we'll see how we go. Quite a range of questions from grassroots up to integrated care systems. So we're going to test you today, I think. So if we start with the question that we heard about earlier on in the meeting today about grassroots funding, as we know, we've got a lot of organisations in Croydon that are run mainly by people volunteering their time, and they try really hard to get a little bit of funding from somewhere to be able to respond to the needs of their local communities. But is there any possibility of them getting any funding from anywhere that you panelists know of, or any funding pots that they could apply for? Or is it just a matter of keeping their eyes open and waiting to see what happens? Anybody like to try to answer that?
Do you want me to make a start, Edwina?
Okay, Sarah, thank you.
So first of all, we're all aware of the context with the council's proposed funding cuts for the voluntary and community sector, and it's in that context that I'll start. CVA throughout has campaigned against those cuts being made for the voluntary and community sector, and following the cabinet meeting on the 6th of December, we're meeting for the Croydon Voluntary Sector Alliance on the 9th. So an invitation there to anybody to come along and be a part of that discussion, hearing how our council is going to support the voluntary sector going onwards. So that's at the council. First of all, more widely, I think it's important to join this up with One Croydon, where we know that there's a lot more funding within the health and social care system, and there's a lot of work going on, particularly that work with the King's Fund, some of which that James mentioned around the local community partnerships. So I think there's an invitation there to anybody to join their local community partnerships And we're working with One Croydon on devolving funding into those partnerships, which would be accountable to local people and far more transparent on how we fund things locally. Alongside that, unfortunately, funding for within the infrastructure groups to work with capacity building on groups and look for funding is really stretched. However, we will always, and before coming on this call, I've emailed back people with funding links to different groups that are external and groups to Croydon and some of our old traditional charities that are still providing small grassroots funding. So people can go to their infrastructure groups and explain who they are, and we'll manage to identify kind of funders that there would be, you know, that they should consider applying towards. Hope that helps. Thanks, Edwina.
It's really helpful. Thank you, Sarah. Is there anything anybody else would like to add?
I think I would like to just say something, because from the local authorities perspective, it's the commitment to work with everybody in the One Alliance to look at all avenues of funding, how funding can be moved around the system. So, and I know that there's working groups that happen, and we're always in discussion and in supporting the King's Fund and making sure we got that money through. So it was done as an alliance, so it was done as a group. And I think because recognising the value of the voluntary sector and the need of the voluntary sector in Croydon.
Thank you, thanks. Agnella or Matthew, anything to add, or shall we move on?
Yeah, no, I think that there are a number of opportunities that are going to happen if we're serious about proactive and preventative care and addressing health inequalities. Then the lessons of the pandemic is we can't do it without the voluntary sector, and therefore, you know, it's a reality check for statutory services that they need to shift some of the funding to the voluntary sector, and the opportunities are there and will be there going forward, and we just need to make sure that we're pushing against an open door and see where the doors are open. Quite apart from the traditional sources of funding, I think from the ICS point of view, there has to be additional funding coming to the front line.
Thank you, thanks. Okay, before yeah, if I could just move us on a little bit. We've had a question on a very similar vein, somebody else talking about social prescribing and about the fact that they're saying that it sounds like a good idea, but they're not clear about what's planned for small organisations that are working at capacity and can't actually take on more referrals. And I'm just wondering if there's any thought about that, or is it the same answer really that you've already given?
It's definitely the same answer, but again, if we've learnt the lessons that social prescribing is the right thing to do to support families and support individuals in the community, then we need to resource it. So if you've got nowhere to refer people to, then you don't have social prescribing. So if we believe in social prescribing, we need to invest in the voluntary sector.
Thank you, thanks. Matthew, you've got your hand up. Yeah.
I have. I mean, I can make the point relevant to social prescribing, but I think it's a broader point that I wanted to make as well, and it sort of links to Angela's point in the Q&A, which is this idea of, you know, there's individual pots of money or elements of funding that people can bid against. That can feel a bit short term and not very sustainable, which is why something like the King's Fund work I think so valuable, because that's a more comprehensive programme. Now, I think it's in short answer to the question around social prescribing, it's a bit of a both and answer. So there are individual areas where we can sort of make bids for against individual schemes and initiatives and pots of money. That's not a bad thing, but it can't be the only way of doing it. There is something about mainstreaming some of this where we know it works, and Agnello, to be fair to him, has done some amazing work on social prescribing as a specific over the years. It's not a new thing for us, and it's seeing the benefits of that and embedding that as part of the future in a more sustainable way is part of the challenge. But I would do that at the same time as being fleet of foot and responding to individual things that come up, because I think doing both gives a better chance of having a sustainable longer term, and that's the aim here, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Sarah, you've got your hand up as well.
Thank you. Just to join that really and share that the social prescribing is one element of, but I think it's a bigger picture that we've all been working on for some time, which is bringing that prevention model properly, joining up and working together more, better interconnection between us, and making sure that we're helping people to get the best kind of life that they can have and make choices, and provide support when that's needed. So I think we're all pulling together with that bigger vision, and our social prescribers are one of the mechanisms helping us to do that. But yes, we certainly need to support the kind of groups and delivery that they are prescribing to. So just to concur with the others. Thanks.
Thank you. If I could, we've had quite a number of questions around a similar theme. I suppose it's not surprising given where organisations are at the moment. But we've had a question about, sorry, my voice is going, had a question about local community partnership meetings that I know have been talked about already, but specifically about how they're going to help to connect Croydon residents and local voluntary organisations with mainstream health and local authority services. And I just wonder if perhaps Sarah could start trying to answer that question. I think it's about how can people really get involved and be part of the solution really, rather than just being on the outside.
Wonderful. Well, that's exactly what we want people to do, Edwina, isn't it? We want people to be a part of the local community partnerships. The idea being that they're quite dynamic spaces where we're inviting that engagement. We're not just sitting in a meeting. We have community builders going out and looking at the margins of communities to make sure that input is brought in too. But we're working up community plans, so really well-informed community plans of recognising what the strengths are already locally and seeing the opportunities for one of a small amount of resource, what could we do? Because actually there's lots of potential in that area. And with community plans, we're better able to make good funding, good commissioning decisions. So we really want people to get involved on that level. Now, the join up with it is very much about the visual that James shared, the join up with the MDT teams, that James is a community facilitator, and there's another community facilitator with the Asian Resource Centre. And they're there to really make that links between health and social care teams and the local community partnerships. So it's all joined up. We're also linking it in with borough-wide plans. So the invitation is there to get involved, Edwina. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Annette, I wonder if you could, does this link in any way with the adult social services work that's happening as well?
Yeah, so we're part of the board. We sit on the board, and we are part of that, and it's very much how we link people locally. So in adult social care, we're working locality based in ICNs and ICN pluses, and moving.
Sorry, would you mind saying what an ICN is?
Sorry, integrated care networks.
Okay.
And there was a pilot scheme in Thornton Heath, that was an ICN plus, and that's been rolled out across Croydon. And it's been very much focused on what's available locally and what's available within their in people's neighbourhoods, and it's all very, very different. So you have Thornton Heath and you have Causden, so it could be very different in different places, and you need to know your local neighbourhoods and your professionals, but also the voluntary sector and the community, what's available within those communities. So right from the front door, the initial contact with adult social care or health, it's how we engage people and how we support people very much locally. So social care have moved into strength-based practice, and we are working on looking at people's lives and what's strong in people's lives, not always what's wrong in people's lives.
Okay, thank you, thanks. And if you don't mind, people, that there's a question about integrated care systems, which is the other end of the spectrum, really, I think, from local community development. What does the integrated care system actually mean for Croydon residents? I just wonder, perhaps Matthew, could you start with that one, please?
Happy to, Edwina. I mean, in one sense, I think the focus of the people in Croydon needs to be on the place work in Croydon first and foremost, and not so much around the integrated care system. The integrated care system as a concept is at South West London level. It's there to sort of coordinate and oversee what's happening in each of the boroughs. It's got a scrutiny and performance role, but it's also got a focus on some of the cross-cutting work that can be done better at a level of the ICS, so a level of South West London. And that might be, for example, on the digital agenda. So how do we get health and care services to take advantage of digital technology? Workforce, how do we recruit the best people to South West London? Rather than competing against each other, so Croydon trying to compete against Kingston, how do we do that collectively? Because that might be a great way of encouraging more people to come to South West London as a totality, and then every borough benefits. So there are functions there that the population of Croydon will benefit from and be supported in through the ICS. And the representatives of the ICS come from the places, so they're not a distinct group of people who don't connect in to Croydon. Myself and Agnello, Annette, we've all been part of conversations helping to develop the ICS. Indeed, Annette and I were at a session last week, a workshop to try to create the sort of the starting processes to get the ICS off the ground from next April. So it is going to be important, but for most people, most of the time, and I would support this and indeed encourage it, their focus should be on doing work locally in place, because we know that's where the most innovation happens, closest to where services are actually delivered, and that's where we can make the biggest change that impacts directly on the population that, as health and care services, we have responsibility for. So I'd say, yes, it's important. Those sort of examples I gave are opportunities for people to get involved, but I'd encourage people to, within Croydon, to stay focused on doing everything we can within place, and then connect up through that to the ICS, rather than spend all our time at the ICS and miss out on the opportunities that are within our sort of grasp here in Croydon to improve what we do for the population that we serve and the staff that we employ. So hopefully that's helpful by way of introduction, Edwina.
Okay, that's really helpful, thank you. Is there anything anybody would like to add to that? No? Okay. We're sort of coming to the end of the meeting now, but I have just one last question, if you don't mind, before we wrap up. And really, that's in the press. Sorry, in the press, we hear an awful lot about how health services are really struggling with, coping with the demands of patients because of what's happened through the COVID period, and we know that Croydon Council has its own financial difficulties at the moment, and Sarah's talked about the impact that's having on the community and voluntary sector. What would you see as the role of Croydon residents in trying to help with all of this pressure there is on the system? Is there anything that Croydon residents can do to help themselves, to help their neighbours, their families, to be able to cope at a time when services are under such pressure? Anybody? Agnello, do you want to say something?
I think the first thing to say is that if people feel they have a need or have a problem, that they should contact the NHS. So it's not a question of not contacting the NHS when they've got a problem, because we know during the pandemic people with serious conditions held back from contacting the NHS when they should have done. So that's the first point to make, that if people have got a serious problem, or they don't know whether they've got a serious problem, is get some advice on it. And the NHS is there for just that purpose. The second is, if you've got a condition that is minor, or you don't know, you would normally go and see somebody, then actually why not speak to your pharmacist, or, you know, in the modern direction of travel, go online and get some advice on that as well before contacting any other part of the NHS. Being able to have confidence in terms of whether it's serious or not, whether you can do something to help yourself, will help the rest of the system as well. And the other is, we know that GPs are the first port of call for the majority of people, and the Healthwatch survey showed that as well, is to use the different services of accessing your GP, and not just the telephone. So every GP surgery will have an online availability. They'll have an ability to talk to people online as well. And a lot of the questions can be answered that way as well. As well as the multiple ways that you can consult with GPs, whether it's on the telephone, whether it's video calling, or face-to-face for that matter. So the one thing that the pandemic did was show us the different ways of accessing the NHS. The other is in terms of A&E. I mean, the name is is what it says. It's for accidents and emergencies. So if it's not an accident and it's not an emergency, then that's not the right place for you to go. And therefore contacting 111 in those circumstances if you don't know where to go. And 111 can help you book an appointment if it was something that was an emergency in A&E or the Urgent Treatment Centre, or any other part of the system as well. So there are opportunities for doing that. So one is, you know, asking chemists, using online, and finding out where's the best place to go.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you, Agno. Now, while you were talking, all three of the other panelists put their hands up, but it didn't see in which order they went up. So I do apologise. I'm going to go around the screen clockwise on my screen. So sorry, Matthew, you're last. But Annette, you're next.
There's a couple of things really. I would say people must be vaccinated. People need to get their flu jabs, and they need to get their vaccinations and their boosters. That's how we can help NHS this year, particularly. I would also say know your neighbours. So in your communities, for residents of Croydon, know your, beside me, I've got an elderly couple, know your neighbours and check on them to see that they're okay. And it could be that we need, if the bad weather comes and it snows, that people, or I see that people don't go out and fall and break a leg. We do a little bit of shopping. We could be quite practical, I think, but also if you haven't seen people for a while, knock on the door. And if they need help or they are in need of help, then please refer in. I think it's health and social care and the voluntary sector are not closed. It is going to be very difficult. It is very difficult, but it is important. The most vulnerable, that we support the most vulnerable in our communities. We did it through the lockdown, and I feel that if we all did our little bit through the winter, it will make a huge difference to the NHS and to the people of Croydon.
Thank you. Thanks. Sarah, would you like to add anything?
Yes, please. Thanks, Awina. I think it's a great question. And it's about where we start with these things. And I think we should start with strong communities, and by inviting people to play their part. It's all about that prevention again, isn't it? And when we work with community builders, we ask people to talk about what they love about their area and what they care enough to act on. And everybody tends to have something that they care enough to act on. And when it comes to what the barriers are to doing that, sometimes it's because people feel like they're not invited to, that it's a service. Whereas actually that checking on your neighbours, or being interested in passing on skills or sharing stories from the past is all really helpful. Having somebody to listen is really helpful. So I think each of us should ask, what do we care enough about to act on, and encourage others to do so. And if we can, have that collective strength that we saw throughout the pandemic, then we're on a winner for the future, I think. Thanks, Adrina.
Thanks. And finally, but not least, Matthew.
The benefit of going last is you can reflect on what everybody else says. The downside is they've made excellent points and left me little space to add. I concur with what each of my fellow panelists have said. A couple of final bits, I think, for me. I mean, this winter, it's going to be a challenge, and we need to be honest about that. You know, we've got some real issues across health and care with the demand that is coming, with staff obviously having worked through, as people have right across the country, of course, in all sectors, the pandemic, which has been very challenging and difficult for people, the population most importantly. So we're starting from quite a challenging position, and I think there'll be points where it is tough this winter. And what I would say is, if people can continue in the way that Agnello, Annette and Sarah have set out to help us, to help you, then I think that's the best we can ask. Remember, the health and care service is open, and that if you are seriously ill and unwell, need support, the most vulnerable in our society, then you definitely do need to come forward. But if there are alternatives for you, then please do take the opportunity. There are lots more alternatives these days than there used to be, and don't think that, you know, if you're not sat in A&E, you're not going to get care because there's nowhere else. That is far from the truth. And in Croydon, we've got lots of opportunities there for people to access, and if we do that, we'll be in the best place possible for this winter. But I don't think even doing all of that, there will be points over the next few months which are really challenging. And my final word would be, if the local population can continue to support us, both in sort of words and deeds over this period, that'll help, because the staff are very, very committed right across health and care and the voluntary sector here in Croydon, and the support that we get from the population massively helps, and so if you can do that as well, I think that would be much appreciated, and we'll just give the boost to the staff that at points over the next few months we may well need, on the basis it's likely to be quite a challenging period.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much to all of our panelists for giving up your time to be here this afternoon, and thank you for all of your comments. That's been really, really helpful. So that brings us to the end of our annual meeting. I would like to remind everybody that we have got a follow-up survey that you will be getting a copy of. If you could just fill it in, it helps us to improve for the future. And thank you very much for your time, and hope to see you next year, possibly even face to face, which would be nice, wouldn't it? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Edwina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edwina.
Thanks very
Thank you,
much.
Edwina.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Thank you, Agnello.
Well done.
Thanks.
If the team could stay on, it would be great if we can just have a catch up for a second.
Yeah.
Am I included?
No, I mean, you can come in as well.
Okay.
Is that Olusina?
It's Olusina, yeah.
Yeah. Just checking that we've only got team and I mean, happy for board members to stay on for a sec, just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that's good.
You can turn on your video if you're.
The recording will be on YouTube. We're live on YouTube now for the question in the chat. So if you go onto YouTube, the recording will be on there.
Yeah, we need to stop YouTube, don't we?
Yeah, it's fine now, isn't it?
It stopped already.
It stopped already. It still says live on here.